The silent threat. The galaxy had always been a place of balance. Powerful empires, peaceful planets, and advanced civilizations all coexisted, each playing their role in the grand scheme of things. Among them was Earth, a small, relatively unknown planet on the edge of the galaxy. Humanity, with its bustling cities, oceans, and green forests, had long been seen as insignificant. The Galactic Council, the highest governing body in the galaxy, paid little attention to it. Earth was just another planet. Nothing special, nothing to fear, but they were wrong. On Earth, life continued as normal. People went about their daily routines, unaware of the storm that was brewing beneath their feet. In a hidden laboratory far below the planet's surface, a group of human scientists had made a discovery that would change everything. They had found something ancient, something powerful. It was an energy source unlike any the galaxy had ever seen, deep within the Earth's core. And it was dangerous. The scientists had spent years studying this unknown energy. At first, they had been cautious, unsure of its full potential. But as time passed, they began to realize its true power. It was a power that could destroy entire star systems, wipe out fleets of ships, and bring down empires. But they didn't understand everything about it. They only knew that it was ancient, older than the galaxy itself. One of the scientists, Dr. Lillian Carter, was the first to truly understand what they had discovered. She had spent countless nights studying the ancient texts left behind by long-forgotten civilizations, piecing together the clues. She knew that this energy had the potential to bring the galaxy to its knees. It could be the end of everything, or it could be Earth's salvation. Dr. Carter kept the discovery a secret, not telling even her closest colleagues. She knew that if the Galactic Council ever learned of it, they would come to Earth, take the energy, and use it for their own purposes. The idea of such power falling into the wrong hands terrified her, so she made a choice. She would keep this secret to herself, and only a few others would know the true potential of what lay beneath Earth's surface. But secrets like this never stay hidden forever. Far above Earth, in the gleaming halls of the Galactic Council, life continued as usual. The council was made up of representatives from dozens of planets, each with their own interests and agendas. Earth was always a footnote in their discussions, far too insignificant to warrant much attention. The humans had never been a threat. They had their own problems to deal with, wars, politics, and technology that was far behind the rest of the galaxy. But they had no idea how wrong they were. It all started with a strange energy spike. At first, it seemed like a glitch, something minor that would quickly be forgotten. But the energy spikes kept coming, increasing in frequency and intensity. A few council members raised concerns, but the majority dismissed it. Earth had never been a threat, and they saw no reason to worry now. However, one of the younger representatives, Talia Vorn, had a different perspective. She had been studying the energy readings from Earth, and she wasn't convinced it was a glitch. There was something strange about the way the energy behaved. It seemed deliberate. She suspected that someone on Earth had discovered something powerful, something they hadn't accounted for. Talia raised the issue in the next council meeting. Most of the representatives laughed it off, but a few listened. Still, they saw no need for action. After all, Earth was just a backwater planet, and the council had more important matters to attend to. But Talia couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She pushed harder, asking for an investigation into the energy spikes. At first, her requests were ignored. But then, something unexpected happened. A small colony on the edge of the galaxy, not far from Earth, was destroyed in a flash of light. The Galactic Council received reports of the destruction, but there were no survivors, no signs of a battle, and no explanation. The colony simply ceased to exist. Panic spread quickly throughout the council. How could this happen? There had been no warning, no signs of an attack. The only thing the council could agree on was that they had no idea who or what had caused it. Talia immediately suspected Earth. She had been monitoring the energy readings from the planet, and she knew that something powerful was brewing there. She pushed once again for an investigation, but the council hesitated. They didn't want to waste resources investigating a planet they had long dismissed as insignificant. But with the destruction of the colony, things had changed. Reluctantly, the council authorized a small fleet to be sent to Earth, just to investigate the situation. They hoped it would be a simple mission: check the energy spikes, make sure nothing was wrong, and return to their regular duties. But deep down, Talia knew that this was only the beginning. The energy from Earth was growing stronger, and if they didn't act fast, they might be too late. As the fleet made its way toward Earth, the people of the planet remained unaware of the danger approaching. They had no idea that the galaxy was about to change forever. Earth was no longer the peaceful, forgotten planet on the edge of space. It had become a ticking time bomb. And no one knew it yet, but the Galactic Council had just made the biggest mistake of its existence. The first warning. The Galactic Council had underestimated Earth for too long. What they didn't realize was that humanity, often seen as primitive, was capable of things no one could predict. As the fleet approached Earth, tensions began to rise across the galaxy. The once peaceful space lanes surrounding the planet now felt charged with an uneasy energy. But the people of Earth went on with their daily lives, unaware that their world was about to become the center of an intergalactic storm. The first warning came unexpectedly. A small colony, nestled on the outskirts of a star system near the edge of the galaxy, suddenly vanished. It wasn't a quiet disappearance. No, the destruction was swift and violent. One moment, the colony's bright lights illuminated the darkness of space, and the next, there was nothing. Just a vast, empty void where once there had been life. The report came in shockwaves to the Galactic Council. No debris, no signs of an attack, no survivors. The data didn't match anything they had encountered before. It wasn't a natural disaster. It wasn't a simple military strike. It was something else, something terrifying. A team of investigators was sent to the site of the disaster. But when they arrived, they found nothing. Not even the faintest trace of the colony remained. The place where families, workers, and scientists had once thrived was now an eerie emptiness, devoid of anything that could explain the sudden destruction. All they found was a faint energy signature, just a blip on their scans, too weak to be the source of the attack, but enough to send chills down their spines. The Galactic Council was in disarray. How could something so powerful happen without warning? There was no weapon in the galaxy capable of erasing a colony so completely, leaving no trace of life or activity. No known species had this kind of capability. Talia Vorn, still convinced that Earth was somehow involved, pushed harder for answers. She was the only one who seemed to understand the significance of the energy readings they had been tracking from Earth. But her pleas were dismissed by the Council. After all, Earth had never shown any signs of advanced technology or military strength. How could they pose a threat now? However, the mystery of the destroyed colony was just the beginning. Days after the first attack, a second disaster struck. A mining station near the Galactic Council's core was obliterated in a similar fashion. The energy signature, faint but unmistakable, was traced back to Earth. This time, the Council could no longer ignore the possibility that humanity was involved. Still, they couldn't believe that Earth, so small, so seemingly insignificant, could possess such power. It defied logic. How could a planet that had never been a serious player on the galactic stage suddenly wield the kind of energy capable of destroying entire colonies and stations? Desperation started to spread through the ranks of the Galactic Council. Representatives from the more powerful planets demanded action. The attacks couldn't be brushed aside any longer. But still, no one could agree on what to do. Some wanted to send a massive fleet to Earth immediately. Others believed the destruction was a fluke, something that could be dealt with in time. And there were those who wondered if perhaps the energy spikes were just a coincidence, an anomaly that would go away on its own. Talia's warnings grew more insistent. She begged the Council to act quickly, but her pleas fell on deaf ears. Earth had been ignored for so long that no one wanted to believe it could pose a real threat. But things were moving faster than the Council realized. In the darkened depths of Earth's underground laboratories, the humans who had uncovered the ancient energy were making plans. They had found the key to the weapon's full potential. They had cracked the code. And now, they were ready to take action. Dr. Lillian Carter, the scientist who had first understood the magnitude of what they had uncovered, was no longer the cautious, hesitant researcher she had once been. The discovery had changed her. The knowledge she had gained from the ancient texts had transformed her, filling her with a sense of purpose and power. She knew what had to be done. Earth had been a servant to the galaxy for too long, quietly existing in the shadow of the powerful empires. Now it was time for Earth to stand on its own, to demand respect. The weapon was ready, but the problem was that no one, not even the humans who had uncovered it, fully understood what would happen when it was activated. Would it destroy Earth? Would it tear the planet apart? Or would it do something even more unimaginable, something that would send shockwaves through the galaxy? As the Galactic Council continued to argue, a third disaster struck. A massive freighter, carrying supplies to a remote outpost, vanished into thin air. It was the same pattern, no warning, no signs of an attack, just the sudden, complete disappearance of the ship and its crew. A faint energy signature was detected once again, this time unmistakably linked to Earth. It was clear now. The attacks weren't random. They were deliberate. Earth had become a threat, and the galaxy didn't yet realize the full scope of what that meant. Talia, now convinced that Earth was preparing for something catastrophic, was determined to stop it. She urged the Council to send a fleet to Earth immediately. This time, there could be no delays, no hesitations. If they didn't act now, the consequences would be far worse than they could imagine. But the Council was split. Some believed the attacks were a simple warning. Others feared they were just the beginning of something much more dangerous. The tension was rising, and the galaxy was on the edge of a disaster it could not yet comprehend. Back on Earth, the first steps toward vengeance had been taken. The humans had made their decision. The question was no longer if Earth would strike back, it was when. And with that thought, the silent threat that had been quietly simmering beneath the surface of Earth was now awake, ready to change the galaxy forever. The Galactic Council's fear. The destruction of the freighter was the final straw. The once dismissed concerns from Talia Vorn had now grown into undeniable evidence. Earth was no longer the peaceful, insignificant planet it had once been. A shadow of fear began to loom over the Galactic Council, but no one was ready to admit how deep the threat might go. The high towers of the Council echoed with frantic voices, but it was clear the galaxy was on the brink of a crisis, and Earth was at its heart. The representatives from the core worlds, once so confident in their superiority, now found themselves at a loss. The fleet they had sent to Earth was no longer reporting. Their communications were cut off. No distress signals, just silence. It was as though they had vanished into thin air, leaving nothing behind but an eerie, unsettling emptiness. The energy spikes traced back to Earth had intensified. And now, the power radiating from the planet was enough to cause distortions in the very fabric of space around it. Talia stood in the middle of the council chambers, staring at the silent holograms of the fleet commanders who had failed to return. Their faces, once full of certainty, were now absent, replaced only by static interference. She had tried to warn them, tried to make them see the truth. But now, the cost of their inaction was becoming painfully clear. It was no longer just a matter of Earth's secret weapon. It was a matter of survival for the entire galaxy. "Counselor Vorn," said a voice, low and grave. It was Sirac, the representative of the Xenor Empire, one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. His words were sharp, but there was a hint of worry in his tone. "What do you propose we do now? The fleet is lost, and still we know nothing of Earth's true intentions." Talia's gaze hardened. "We need to act now. The longer we wait, the worse it will become. Earth is using the weapon in ways we cannot even imagine. Every passing moment brings the galaxy closer to a disaster. Sirek scoffed. You speak of disaster, but we have no evidence of an impending catastrophe. This could simply be a misunderstanding. We should send a team to negotiate with Earth. Show them we are not their enemies. If they truly possess this power, we can negotiate. Talia interrupted, her voice rising. How much longer will you wait? We've been negotiating with Earth for centuries, and it's always been the same. No more. We can't afford to waste time. Earth's weapon is already destabilizing galactic space. Her words fell heavily in the chamber. The idea that the galaxy's fate now rested on the shoulders of one small, overlooked planet was almost too much to comprehend. A planet that had no history of war, no technological supremacy, nothing that could have foretold the storm they were now facing. The Council's indecision was palpable. On one side, the military leaders pushed for immediate action, a decisive attack on Earth, with a fleet strong enough to wipe the planet off the map. On the other side, the diplomats insisted that more time was needed. They argued that humanity, despite the strange energy signatures and inexplicable events, might not fully understand the weapon they had uncovered. Perhaps they could still negotiate, strike a deal. Surely there had to be a way to avoid war. But the voices in favor of diplomacy were growing quieter. The energy spikes coming from Earth were no longer just a series of blips. They were now consistent and powerful. The weapon was active, and its presence was being felt throughout the galaxy. Ships from multiple empires reported strange disruptions in their systems, engines failing, navigation grids shutting down, and communication channels flickering in and out of existence. It was clear that Earth's power was growing, not just in strength, but in influence. The galaxy was already starting to feel the weight of their actions. In a remote sector of the galaxy, a fleet from the Jovian League had been on a routine patrol when they encountered an anomaly. Their sensors picked up a massive wave of energy coming from the direction of Earth. It wasn't just a pulse or a burst. It was a continuous wave, washing over the surrounding space, interfering with everything it touched. The fleet, which had been dispatched to maintain peace in the region, was forced to retreat, powerless in the face of the unseen force that was originating from Earth. Back at the Galactic Council, the tension was escalating. The fear was no longer hidden. It was evident in every voice. "We cannot afford to wait," said Sirek again, his eyes narrowing. "We've seen what Earth is capable of, and we've lost contact with our fleets. We must prepare for the worst." Talia's heart raced as the reality of the situation settled in. She had spent years pushing for action, but now that it was happening, she wasn't sure if it was too late. The galaxy was about to find out just how much power Earth had, and if the weapon was as destructive as they feared, no one would be prepared for the consequences. Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Lillian Carter stood in front of a vast array of screens, monitoring the energy readings as they spiked higher and higher. The weapon was ready. The preparations had all been made. The time for secrecy was over. Humanity had long been pushed to the edge, overlooked and underestimated by the galaxy. Now it was Earth's time to rise. The energy beneath the planet's surface had grown to the point where it was now radiating outward in waves, rippling through the cosmos. Carter had realized the weapon's true nature. It didn't just destroy. It reshaped the fabric of space itself. The galaxy's established laws were being bent and twisted under its influence. No one had truly understood what Earth had uncovered, not until now. And as the Council continued to deliberate, uncertain of the path forward, Earth had already made its move. There was no going back. The first warning had been a simple wave of destruction. The second had been more than a whisper. It was a scream into the stars. The third, the Council realized too late, would be the final devastating blow. Earth strikes. The moment had arrived. The Galactic Council, still torn between fear and disbelief, could do nothing as the unseen force growing from Earth unleashed its full fury. Communications from the outer rim of the galaxy began to report the unthinkable. Fleets of warships, some of the most advanced in the galaxy, were disappearing into the void, wiped out without a trace. One by one, they vanished, lost to an overwhelming energy that none could comprehend or resist. And all of it, every ship, every loss, could be traced back to Earth. The Council's military leaders were the first to react. They scrambled to assemble a combined fleet large enough to send a clear message to Earth: cease this madness now. But even as their ships assembled, the situation only grew worse. The energy pulses originating from Earth intensified. It was no longer just a disruption in the space-time continuum. It was like a seismic wave crashing against the very fabric of reality itself. Commander Cirrus of the Jalori Starfleet, known for his expertise in galactic warfare, was one of the few who had warned against underestimating Earth. When the order came to mobilize a fleet, he knew it was already too late. They've activated the weapon. We are not facing a threat. We are facing a force that could consume the galaxy if we don't act, he had argued, but his words had fallen on deaf ears. The Council, gripped by pride and the belief that Earth was still just a distant, insignificant world, refused to believe the full extent of the danger until it was staring them in the face. By the time the Council's fleet reached the coordinates near Earth, there was nothing left to do but watch in stunned horror. The first ships arrived, and within minutes, the gravitational field around Earth began to shift. All systems began to fail. The shields flickered and collapsed. Navigation systems went haywire. The entire fleet, which had been confident in its technological superiority, was utterly powerless. What was happening was beyond any technology they had ever encountered. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense, not something that fired lasers or missiles. It was something much more profound, a force of nature, ancient energy, drawn from the core of Earth itself. It pulsed with raw, unfathomable power. And as the fleet attempted to make a stand, it was clear that they were already outmatched. The first ship, a mighty destroyer from the Andromeda Union, was the first to feel the weapon's force. At first, there was nothing, just a strange hum that reverberated through the metal hull. Then, in a flash, every system on the ship went dead. The lights blinked out. The crew lost control. The destroyer, a behemoth that had once ruled space, was helpless in the face of this unknown energy. It began to drift, helpless, as its internal structure started to crack under the strain. Within moments, the ship exploded into a shower of debris, and the remnants were scattered across space, vanishing into nothingness. One by one, each of the Galactic Council's ships was destroyed. Some disintegrated instantly, their energy fields ripped apart. Others were pulled into a strange gravitational anomaly, unable to escape as they were dragged deeper into the gravitational well emanating from Earth's core. The sight of these ships, some of the most powerful in the galaxy, being reduced to nothing but floating wreckage was enough to send a chilling message across the cosmos. Back on Earth, Dr. Lillian Carter watched the destruction unfold on her screens. The weapon, her creation, was now in full swing. The humans had once been the underdogs, forgotten by the rest of the galaxy, their technology nothing compared to the advanced civilizations around them. But now, they were showing the universe a new kind of power, one that had been hidden beneath their feet for millennia. Her hands trembled as she observed the results of her actions. They had awakened something ancient and powerful, something that Earth was now controlling. The weapon didn't just destroy, it reshaped the galaxy. It bent reality itself, warped the space between planets, and rendered any attempt to fight back utterly useless. It was a power that had no precedent, and the Council had no answer for it. As the last of the galactic fleet was decimated, the galaxy's attention turned toward Earth. The once quiet, forgotten planet had taken center stage, and the message was clear. Earth was no longer a passive player. Earth was now a force to be reckoned with, and the Council had made a grave mistake by underestimating it. Back in the Council chambers, chaos erupted. Representatives scrambled to assess the damage, their faces pale with fear. Ships that had once been feared throughout the galaxy were gone, vanished without a trace. The Council's diplomats, who had spent their careers negotiating peace across the stars, were at a loss. What words could they possibly say now? How could they explain to their people that the galaxy's most advanced fleets had been wiped out by a planet they had ignored for centuries? "We have to stop this," said High Commander Elith of the Centauri Empire, her voice tight with panic. "We cannot allow Earth to continue down this path. If they do, there will be nothing left of the galaxy but ashes." Her words echoed through the chamber, but no one had an answer. They had been too slow, too arrogant in their belief that Earth could never challenge the established order. And now, it was clear, the galaxy was no longer in control. Dr. Carter stood before the massive screens in her underground lab, her mind racing. The weapon was functioning beyond her expectations, but even she didn't fully understand the long-term effects. Could it destroy Earth? Could it consume everything, including their planet? She wasn't sure. But what she did know was that there was no turning back. The energy waves were radiating outward, and as they spread, they interfered with the very fabric of space. Planets were beginning to experience strange phenomena. Shifts in gravitational fields, disruptions in their atmospheres. A few systems reported entire moons being pulled off their orbits, drifting aimlessly into space. The galaxy's once stable balance was crumbling under the weight of Earth's newfound power. Earth's strike was just the beginning. The Council had failed to act in time, and now humanity held the reins of a power that could change everything. As the galactic leaders debated their next move, a final, haunting message was sent from Earth to the rest of the galaxy. "You ignored us. You underestimated us. Now you will face the consequences." The galaxy was no longer the same. Earth had struck, and the universe would never be the same again. The shocking revelation. The galaxy was in chaos. Planets that had once thrived with life now trembled in fear, unsure of what to expect next. The power radiating from Earth had caused ripples through the fabric of space itself. Entire star systems had been disrupted, and moons had been thrown from their orbits. The weapon that had once been hidden beneath Earth's surface was now a force of nature, and no one knew how far its influence could extend. Yet, despite the havoc Earth had caused, no one truly understood what had been unleashed. No one knew the full extent of what lay within Earth's core. The Galactic Council was in disarray. The representatives from the core worlds, who had once ruled the galaxy with unquestioned dominance, now felt the weight of their own arrogance. They had ignored Talia Vorn's warnings, brushed aside her growing concerns. Now the consequences were unfolding before their eyes. The fleets they had sent to Earth were destroyed. Their best generals, their most powerful warships, reduced to mere fragments of metal floating through space. Talia Vorn stood before the Council, her face grim as she prepared to deliver the latest, most terrifying news. The Galactic Council, though shaken, had remained stubbornly resistant to any form of peace talks. Their belief in their superior technology had blinded them to the truth. Earth had discovered something ancient, something powerful beyond their comprehension. But now, as the effects of Earth's weapon continued to reverberate across the galaxy, the time for diplomacy was fading fast. "We cannot defeat this with military might alone," Talia began, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "We're dealing with something far beyond our understanding. The energy surging from Earth isn't just destructive, it's alive. It's as if the planet itself is acting through this weapon." Her words echoed in the silent chamber, and a ripple of shock passed through the Council. If what she said was true, the weapon was far more dangerous than they had ever anticipated. It wasn't simply a tool of destruction. It was a living, breathing entity with an intelligence of its own. But the implications of Talia's statement were difficult to grasp. No one had ever encountered a force like this before. "What do you mean, it's alive?" Commander Saris, the head of the Zenora forces, asked incredulously. He had seen firsthand the devastation Earth's weapon had caused, But he still couldn't bring himself to accept the idea that the weapon was something more than just a powerful machine. Talia took a deep breath. I've spent the past few days studying every available piece of data from Earth's energy spikes. It's not a conventional weapon. The signals are erratic, unpredictable, as if the energy is thinking. It responds to its environment in ways no technology we know of could. She paused, her gaze drifting toward the massive hologram that now filled the room, a representation of Earth's energy fields as they spread through the galaxy. The spikes had become more frequent, more intense, and each new burst of energy seemed to bend space itself. What Earth has uncovered is not just an ancient weapon, it is a remnant of a long-lost civilization, a species older than any we know, a species that understood how to manipulate the very fabric of the universe itself. The council members exchanged uneasy glances. The concept of such a species, a civilization that could shape reality itself, was something they had never considered. The known universe had existed for eons, and all the empires, the wars, and the alliances they had forged seemed like a mere blip in comparison to the ancient powers that once ruled. Yet here, on Earth, a planet that had been largely ignored for centuries, something had been discovered, something that could alter the course of the galaxy forever. A deep silence fell over the room as Talia's words sank in. There had always been rumors of ancient civilizations, those that existed before the rise of the Galactic Council, but nothing concrete had ever been found. Until now. What do we do now? Elith, the representative from the Centauri Empire, asked softly. Her voice, usually filled with authority, now sounded uncertain. We can't just leave Earth too. Whatever this is, it could destroy us all. Talia shook her head slowly. It's not just Earth that's in danger, it's the entire galaxy. The weapon was never meant to be a tool of war. It was a safeguard, a last resort against an extinction-level event. And now, it's awake. The civilization that created it is gone, but their creations have remained. And Earth, for reasons unknown, has become the new caretaker of this power. At this revelation, the room erupted into a chorus of questions, panic spreading like wildfire. If Earth was merely a vessel, a caretaker for this ancient force, what would happen if the power grew too strong? What if it had a mind of its own, a will that had no loyalty to the galaxy, no allegiance to the civilizations within it? And what would happen if the humans on Earth decided to use it, not as a defense, but as a weapon of their own? The panic was palpable. They had feared Earth's weapon, but now they feared something far worse, the unknown. Talia raised her hand for silence, her voice cold as she continued. The truth is, we don't know how this will end. We don't know if Earth has the means to control it. But we do know this. The weapon is tied to Earth's core. If we want to stop it, we'll have to go to the source. For a long moment, no one spoke. The idea of sending a fleet to Earth to attempt to destroy its core was unthinkable, not just because of the power Earth had shown, but because no one knew exactly how to deal with the weapon without further enraging it. To destroy it might mean the end of the planet itself. But there were no other options. The Council was running out of time. The energy waves that Earth was sending out were continuing to grow. The very fabric of space was becoming more unstable with each passing hour. Soon, entire systems could begin to collapse under the strain. There was no more room for hesitation. We can't just sit here and wait. High Commander Elith finally spoke, her voice tight. Talia, gather a team. We're going to Earth. And this time, we will not ask for their surrender. We will take it by force if necessary. Talia didn't respond right away. Her mind was racing. She knew the danger of what the Council was asking. They were about to make the same mistake again. They had miscalculated Earth's power once. They could not afford to make that mistake twice. But as the Council members began to prepare for the worst, Talia couldn't shake the thought that Earth might not just be playing for power, they might be playing for survival. And in that case, the galaxy might not be prepared for the consequences of this revelation. The Council's last hope. The tension in the Galactic Council chambers had reached a boiling point. The decision had been made. Earth had to be stopped. But no one could predict what the consequences would be. A full-scale assault on Earth, especially with the new knowledge that Earth's weapon was not merely destructive but alive, was a gamble. The galaxy had never faced anything like this before, and for the first time in eons, the great empires that had once stood as pillars of power and order in the galaxy felt a creeping sense of helplessness. Talia Vorn, now appointed as the lead negotiator and commander of the mission, stood alone in her quarters, staring at a star map of the galaxy. Each pinprick of light on the map represented a star system, a civilization. Earth's star, once so insignificant, now burned with an intensity that dwarfed all others. It was surrounded by waves of energy, stretching farther with every passing moment. The weapon had grown stronger, its reach more far-reaching than anyone had thought possible. The sheer volume of power being unleashed from the planet made it nearly impossible to comprehend. Talia had seen it for herself, how the galaxy seemed to warp under the energy emanating from Earth. She had seen planets on the edge of systems being pulled off course, moons shuddering in their orbits as if they were subject to some invisible force. The very fabric of space seemed to tremble, and Earth was the source. But for all the fear and uncertainty, Talia had a duty. The Council had placed the responsibility of solving the crisis in her hands, but she knew that if they failed, the galaxy would be consumed. A decision had to be made. The plan was simple in theory, but unimaginable in practice. The most powerful fleets in the galaxy would converge on Earth, a force capable of overwhelming any defense. They would strike the core of Earth, the source of the weapon. The idea was that if the weapon could be deactivated, if they could somehow neutralize the energy, it might restore balance, or at least stop the galaxy from collapsing into chaos. But there was one critical issue. No one knew how to turn off the weapon. No one knew how to neutralize Earth's energy without risking the destruction of the planet. "I'll lead the fleet," Commander Saris of the Zenor Empire declared. He had been quiet during most of the discussions, but now his voice rang with determination. "If anyone is going to strike Earth's heart, it should be me. My forces have dealt with the worst enemies the galaxy has to offer. We won't fail." Talia nodded, but her thoughts were elsewhere. Saris had a point. His forces were among the best in the galaxy, but they were dealing with something far beyond conventional war. She couldn't shake the feeling that this mission, no matter how it ended, would not go according to their plan. They began assembling the fleet, the largest task force the galaxy had ever seen, nearly 500 ships, from colossal dreadnoughts to agile strike cruisers, each representing a different faction of the Council. The best pilots, the strongest warriors, the brightest strategists. This fleet was designed to be unstoppable. But for all the power at their disposal, the galaxy's military leaders were facing an enemy that they could not predict, let alone understand. Earth had shown that it could tear fleets apart without so much as lifting a finger. What would they do when they arrived? How would they fight something that wasn't just a weapon but a living force? As the fleet set course for Earth, a deep sense of foreboding gripped the galaxy. Across the stars, from peaceful colonies to the wealthiest planets in the core, there was an unsettling silence. No one knew what was coming, and even fewer knew how to stop it. News of Earth's strikes had spread like wildfire. And now, the galaxy was watching. The Council's decision to retaliate was their final move, their last hope. And every civilization held its breath, knowing that the outcome would reshape the galaxy. On Earth, Dr. Lillian Carter had been watching the Council's every move. She had known it would come to this. The fleet was coming. Earth's once-forgotten past, now awakened, had drawn the attention of the entire galaxy. But she couldn't help but feel a sense of sorrow for what was about to unfold. The galaxy had created its own monster. The weapon Earth had discovered was never meant to be used as a tool of vengeance. It was a safeguard, a defense against a threat that had long been erased from memory. Carter knew the Council had no way of understanding what they were dealing with, but she also knew that Earth's future was now tied to this weapon. And no matter what happened, Humanity could never go back to the way things were. The weapon was a part of them now, a part of their history, and that history could not be undone. A lone figure stepped into the lab, interrupting Carter's thoughts. It was Lucas, one of her most trusted colleagues. He had been working alongside her from the beginning, and while he didn't fully understand the implications of the weapon, he knew the dangers of the path they were on. "They're coming," Lucas said, his voice tight with concern. "The fleet is almost here. What do we do?" Carter turned to him, her face pale but resolute. "We can't stop them. Not without destroying Earth in the process. But we don't have to fight. We can show them the truth." Lucas stared at her, confused. "Show them the truth? How?" Carter's gaze drifted to the screen, where the energy readings from Earth's core pulsed brightly. "We let them come. But they'll have to see what Earth has become, what this weapon really is. They need to understand that it's not just a weapon. It's a living, breathing force. And when they understand that, they'll see that it cannot be controlled. It will never be theirs to wield. Earth's future is tied to this, and if they want to destroy it, they'll destroy us all." Lucas stood silent, unsure of how to respond. The weight of Carter's words hung heavily in the air. It wasn't just about defeating the Council's fleet. It was about showing them that they had unleashed something far beyond their grasp. It wasn't just Earth that was at stake. It was the entire galaxy. Back at the Galactic Council, the fleet was almost ready to make its final jump into Earth's space. Commander Saris stood at the helm of his flagship, staring at the glowing blue vortex that would take them directly to Earth's orbit. His fleet had crossed the galaxy's vast expanse, but in the face of what lay ahead, nothing seemed certain. Even with the might of the galaxy's finest ships, there was an unsettling feeling deep within him, a sense that they were walking into a trap. As the countdown to jump began, one question echoed in his mind. Would they succeed, or would Earth's vengeance tear the galaxy apart? The last hope of the Galactic Council was about to face the ultimate test. Earth's final victory. The fleet arrived. As the massive armada of warships, dreadnoughts, and cruisers emerged from their jump into Earth's orbit, they were met with a profound silence. For a moment, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. This wasn't like any previous battle. There were no enemy ships, no immediate signs of defense. Just the ominous hum of the energy waves emanating from the planet's surface, rippling outward like a living, breathing force. Commander Saris stood on the bridge of his flagship, eyes scanning the endless expanse of space. His fleet had been carefully arranged, the ships positioned in a perfect formation, ready to strike the heart of Earth's weapon. The plan was clear: disable the core, silence the energy surges, and neutralize the threat once and for all. But as he gazed at Earth's distant form, something gnawed at him. There was an unnatural stillness to the space around the planet, a heaviness that wasn't just the weight of power. It was as though the planet itself was watching them. "Commander," said one of his officers, voice trembling, "we're picking up a massive energy fluctuation, coming directly from Earth's core." Saris narrowed his eyes. The weapon was already responding to their presence. The fleet's weapon systems were primed, ready to unleash destruction. But a cold sense of uncertainty crept over him. It was as if they were walking into a trap that had been set long before they arrived. He had prepared for everything, except the possibility that this weapon, this living force, might have an agenda of its own. The energy pulses grew stronger with each passing moment. The ships in Saris' fleet began to feel the effects, their systems flickering, their shields losing power. It was as though Earth itself was pushing back against their presence, testing their strength, reminding them of how powerless they truly were. Back on Earth, Dr. Lillian Carter watched the unfolding events from her underground command center. The screens before her displayed the entire fleet in real time, their movements as they entered Earth's orbit. She had known this moment would come, but now, as the reality set in, she couldn't help but feel the weight of what was about to happen. Her creation, Earth's weapon, was responding. It was no longer just a safeguard. It was Earth's final defense. "I've done everything I can," she muttered to herself, her voice barely audible. "Now, it's up to the planet." Lucas stood beside her, watching as the energy pulses from Earth began to distort the ship's trajectories. "Do you think they'll understand?" he asked, his voice full of doubt. Carter's gaze softened. "They will have no choice but to understand. But will they survive to see it?" A cold shiver ran through the room as Earth's weapon surged once more. The energy was now fully awake, fully alive. Carter felt the strange connection she had with it. The power it held was unlike anything the galaxy had ever known. It was not just a force. It was a message. A message from a civilization long gone, now resurrected through Earth itself. Above, the first of the fleet's ships opened fire, launching a barrage of missiles and energy blasts directly at Earth's core. But as the weapons sped toward their target, something unexpected happened. The energy wave from Earth's surface began to curl, intercepting the incoming fire. In an instant, the missiles disintegrated, their energy absorbed by the weapon, which seemed to swell in power with each attack. On the bridge of Cirrus' flagship, confusion turned to panic. "Report." Cirrus barked. "What happened to our weapons?" "Weapon systems are offline, Commander," came the response. "We can't fire. Our energy is being drained." The fleet was in turmoil. The colossal forces they had brought to bear, the firepower that had once been feared throughout the galaxy, was now useless. Earth's weapon had not only repelled the assault, it was feeding off the attack, growing more powerful with every failed strike. The ships that had once seemed invincible now felt fragile, vulnerable. "It's happening faster than we thought," Talia Vorn whispered from the Council ship, her heart sinking as she observed the destruction unfolding. She had known the weapon was powerful, but this was beyond comprehension. Earth was no longer just a target. It had become a force of nature itself. She turned to the Council members, who were now pale, eyes wide in disbelief. "The galaxy cannot stop it. Earth will not fall. It is beyond our reach." The fleet commanders were in full retreat, but it was already too late. The weapon, sensing their desperation, responded with a final, overwhelming surge of energy. One by one, the ships in Cirrus' fleet began to disintegrate. The once proud vessels, each a symbol of the Council's might, turned to ash in the blink of an eye, scattered into the void like the dust of an ancient civilization. There was no battle. There was only the terrible, unstoppable force of Earth's power. The few remaining ships attempted to flee, their engines firing at full throttle. But even as they sped away, they found themselves drawn back, pulled into the powerful gravity of Earth's core. The space around them twisted and warped as they were consumed by the very energy they had sought to destroy. As the last of the fleet vanished, a hush fell over the galaxy. The mighty Council, the rulers of hundreds of worlds, had been shattered by the once-forgotten planet. Earth's weapon had proven to be not just a tool, but a force that had rewritten the rules of the galaxy. The weapon was no longer a weapon at all. It was an event. It was the rebirth of an ancient power that no one could control, no one could defeat. Back on Earth, Dr. Carter watched in silence as the last ships disappeared. She had done what she set out to do. Earth had proven its strength. But now, as the dust settled, she wondered what would come next. The galaxy would never be the same. There would be no going back. The Council had been vanquished, but at what cost? Lucas stepped forward, his voice quiet. "What happens now?" Carter took a long, steadying breath. "Now, the galaxy has to rebuild, but Earth will lead it, not as a conqueror, but as a guardian." The final message from Earth rippled out, carried by the weapon's energy to the furthest reaches of space. "We are no longer silent. We are no longer forgotten. We are Earth." And with that, the galaxy would never again forget the power that humanity had unleashed.